Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I've got some chilling stories that were sent in by viewers just like you. These are not for the faint of heart, so get comfortable, and let's dive into the darkness together. Imagine the terror of a normal day twisting into a nightmare, or the secrets hidden within a seemingly innocent heirloom. We're about to explore the dark corners of our world, where shadows move on their own and whispers carry ancient evils. The alarm clock blared its usual annoying tune, but for some reason Sarah found it oddly distant. She reached over and silenced it, her hand feeling strangely heavy. As she opened her eyes, a wave of dizziness washed over her. "Just need coffee," she mumbled to herself, her voice sounding muffled and unfamiliar. Dragging herself out of bed, she noticed the room seemed darker than usual, the morning light struggling to pierce through the gloom. Shrugging off the strange heaviness and the oppressive darkness, Sarah stumbled towards the kitchen. The familiar scent of coffee usually greeted her, but today, a metallic tang hung in the air, making her stomach churn. The clock on the microwave flashed 7 a.m., the same time it always displayed when she woke up. Power must have flickered again, she thought, even though the digital clock on the stove read the correct time. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the quiet morning. Sarah froze, her heart pounding against her ribs. It sounded like it came from Mrs. Henderson's apartment next door. Before she could even process what was happening, another scream, filled with raw terror, echoed through the building. Fear gripped Sarah's throat, choking off any sound she tried to make. She rushed to the door, her hand shaking as she reached for the knob. As she pressed her ear against the cold wood, the screams abruptly stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow more terrifying. Hesitantly, Sarah opened her apartment door, peering into the hallway. It was empty, but the metallic scent seemed stronger now, making her eyes water. She took a tentative step out, her bare feet encountering something sticky on the floor. Looking down, she gasped, her stomach lurching. A trail of thick, crimson liquid snaked its way down the hallway, disappearing around the corner towards Mrs. Henderson's apartment. Dust motes danced in the faint beam of Emily's flashlight as she explored the attic of her grandmother's old Victorian house. The air was thick with the smell of must and decay, a testament to decades of forgotten memories. Her flashlight beam landed on an ornately carved wooden chest tucked away in a shadowy corner. Its dark wood gleamed even in the dim light. The chest was heavier than she expected, the intricate carvings cold and smooth beneath her fingertips. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a beautiful silver hand mirror. Its handle depicted a serpent intertwined around a blooming rose. Drawn to its beauty, Emily picked up the mirror. Shaking off an uneasy feeling, she examined her reflection. But something wasn't right. Her eyes held a strange, predatory glint. As she placed the mirror back, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stumbled upon something more than just a beautiful antique. That night, Emily's dreams were plagued by vivid nightmares. She woke up with a gasp, her heart racing, the feeling of dread clinging to her like a shroud. The campfire crackled merrily, casting dancing shadows against the towering trees that surrounded the campsite. Chris, Jake, and Emily huddled closer to the warmth, their laughter echoing through the stillness of the woods. They had been planning this camping trip for months, eager to escape the city and reconnect with nature. But as the sun began its descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the forest floor, a sense of unease settled over the group. "Emily, did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her eyes darting nervously towards the darkening tree line. "Emily!" Sounded like something moving out there. "Chris, probably just a deer or a raccoon," Chris replied, trying to sound nonchalant. But even he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, their every move scrutinized by unseen eyes. As darkness enveloped the forest, the sounds of the night grew louder, amplified by their imaginations. The rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant hoot of an owl. Each sound sent shivers down their spines, their laughter replaced by tense silence. They took turns keeping watch, their eyes scanning the impenetrable darkness beyond the reach of the firelight, their senses on high alert. Hours crawled by, each one feeling like an eternity. Just when they thought they could finally relax their guard, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, coming from somewhere deep within the woods. They froze, their blood turning to ice in their veins. The scream was followed by an eerie silence, broken only by the crackling fire and the frantic beating of their own hearts.
"Jake, what was that?" Jake stammered, his voice barely a whisper.
Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the turmoil brewing within Daniel. He couldn't shake the unsettling feeling of being watched, a sensation that had been gnawing at him for weeks. It had started subtly, a fleeting glimpse of a dark figure in the periphery of his vision, a whisper of movement in a darkened doorway. He had dismissed it initially as fatigue or an overactive imagination, but as the days turned into weeks, the feeling intensified, becoming a constant, unwelcome companion. He first noticed it on his way home from work late one evening. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, and as he hurried along the deserted sidewalk, he could have sworn he saw a tall, shadowy figure lurking just beyond the pool of light behind him. He had stopped, his heart pounding in his chest, and turned to confront his stalker, but the figure was gone. The next day, as he sat in a crowded coffee shop desperately trying to focus on his work, he caught a glimpse of the same shadowy figure through the window, its dark silhouette a stark contrast against the brightly lit interior. It seemed to be watching him, its form shifting and wavering in the reflection of the bustling street scene. He had rushed outside, determined to confront his pursuer, but once again, the figure had vanished without a trace. As the days turned into weeks, the sightings became more frequent, more brazen. The shadowy figure seemed to appear everywhere he went, always lurking at the edge of his vision, observing his every move. He tried to rationalize it, to convince himself that it was all in his mind, but the fear was a constant, gnawing presence in his gut. One evening as he walked home from a friend's house, his nerves already on edge, he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He just knew, that he was being followed. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding against his ribs, his eyes darting nervously from side to side. He could hear the sound of his own footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night, each one seeming to draw him closer to his unseen pursuer. Suddenly he stopped, spinning around to confront his stalker. The streetlight above him flickered, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed on the pavement. And there, standing just behind him, was the shadowy figure. The old rusted sign creaked in the wind, its faded letters barely visible in the fading light. "Welcome to Eldertown," it proclaimed, the cheerful greeting at odds with the oppressive atmosphere that hung heavy over the deserted town square. Sarah had stumbled upon this forgotten corner of America while on a cross-country road trip, her curiosity piqued by a faded map she had found in a dusty antique shop. The map had spoken of Eldertown in hushed whispers, hinting at a dark history, and a secret that lay buried deep within its heart. As she stepped out of her car, the silence of the town pressed in on her, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind whistling through the empty streets. The buildings were old, their paint peeling, their windows dark and lifeless. The few streetlights that still functioned flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced and swayed in the gathering gloom. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she made her way towards what appeared to be the town's only hotel. The sign above the door hung precariously, its once bright neon letters now flickering feebly. "The Elder Inn," it read, the name sending a fresh wave of unease through her. She pushed open the heavy oak door, the hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The air within the hotel was thick with the smell of dust and decay, the silence even more oppressive than it had been outside. She rang the bell on the counter, its sound echoing through the deserted lobby, but no one came. Cobwebs draped the furniture like ghostly shrouds, and the only light came from a single, flickering bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. As she waited, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, her every move scrutinized by unseen eyes. She explored the lobby, hoping to find some sign of life, but the silence was absolute. The only sound was the beating of her own heart, each thump echoing loudly in her ears. Thanks for joining me tonight. I hope these stories left you with chills. Remember, they were sent in by people just like you. Sleep tight and don't let the bedbugs bite. If you dare to share your own encounters, you can always leave me a comment down below. Until next time, stay curious, stay scared.